and graduated from Catholic high school. There's a huge, without even being critical, there is a huge difference when we talk about, now I do this brain stuff, in executive function. It's literally, I got to tell you, like I said, for those of you who know my reversion story, it's I started reading, and I was in the page. I used to know the exact page. I was in the 800s, and an article came up when I was doing my internship after I graduated from chiropractic school. And by the way, I'm a chiropractor, not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, not a MD. I'm a DC. So the idea is that during my internship, there's an article about a couple of masajid in the area I was training. And so I called one of the facilities, one of the masajid, the imam answered the phone. And I asked them if I could come over and ask questions, if I could come over and visit the facility. And he said, certainly. And he said, and I have several brothers here. We were talking. You could talk to them also. So I took my Quran over that I was reading at the time, because I'm reading the English translation. And he said, I asked him if this Quran that I'm reading, and I gave it to him and asked him if he could, if that was a good translation, if this is what Muslims believe. And he read it, he looked at the cover right away and said, absolutely, this is one of, he said 3 translations that are approved, even though the Arabic is still different. And now that I know better, all the words have so many different meanings added on. So it's really, I always say it just made sense. And people often say, oh, well, you were looking for things and this gave you answers. Oh, was it a terrible time? I mean, whatever the questions are. The idea is, at the time, it wasn't as emotional as it is today for me. It literally, the more I read it, the more I study, the more secular knowledge I accumulate, lets me know how appropriate the Quran is. And at the time, even though I didn't have the right words for it, why it appealed to me so much. So the sister last week with her executive function question, and could I help with that, because that's where her shortcomings are. I got to tell you, the huge issue with executive function. Well, let me read a definition that I really like. Executive function involves self-regulation, which allows goal-directed behavior and planning. What does that sound like? We've been talking about planning and goal-directed behavior for about a month now. And the self-regulation is hugely important, because that's going to involve both hemispheres, isn't it? And that's what led me right over why I mentioned the Quran. And it's at the forefront of everything I talk about with executive function, because the Quran has emotional, it has logical, which means it has, and then it's also empathy, it has initiation, we talk about inhibition, we've got the 5 pillars of Islam. Literally, how are we going to achieve a goal, action plans, steps? This is what you need to do to achieve that great goal of heaven. And then we also have hugely, as I learned more, hugely, and the thing that the Christians don't have and the Jews don't have, and the other religions that I don't know much about, just the big 3 here, they don't have hadith, they don't have sirah, they don't have then the Sahaba also demonstrating what the Prophet ﷺ taught them. And it's not with the Bible and the writing, it wasn't written at the time it was given. And you certainly don't have any hadith from eyewitnesses. You have, in the Bible, you have about this much Jesus words in red, the biblical Jesus words in red. And some of it is pretty close. It really is. Then the big motivation for Christians when we compare the Bible and the Quran and executive function is you've got a guy, Paul, who had a vision involving falling off of a horse. If you read, as in my book, Who's Right, Who's Wrong, and Why, there are 5 different conversion stories. I'm telling you, I converted 30 years ago, and I still know you hear the same conversion story or reversion story tonight that you heard months ago. You have 5 different versions of Paul's conversion story in the Bible. And if I remember my count, 3 of them are his. 3. One of them involves going to Arabia for a while. And of course, he happened to be involved with a Judaic school of thought, so he probably knew about Ishmael. He went to Arabia. That one would be interesting if it were true. So when we talk about executive function, like I said, now I can actually say that had a huge influence on my accepting Islam. And sister, to answer your question from last week, one of the biggest things you can do is pick up the Quran, all of us, and read it and study it. You have the right, the wrong, the examples. You have do this, do that. You have structure in there. You have organization. And then put that together with the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the lives of the Sahaba, and you're just done. You literally have everything you need to study from a religious perspective. Because remember, the Quran teaches us we should encourage self-regulation, shouldn't we? You should have goal-directed behavior. You've got an example, tie up the camel. You've got rely on the qadr of Allah. You've got to have that big picture, knowing, like I said, if you knew there was no way to fail, what would you do today? What would you start today if you knew there was no way you can fail? And Allah promises us that his mercy outweighs his anger. So think about how accessible heaven is for us if we follow the guidance in the book. And for the non-Muslims, I know I'm really leaning into the Islamic part of this, and I apologize if that's not for you, but that's my belief. Now, when we get into the secular side, remember that executive function, self-regulation, and goal planning, controlling your behavior, initiation, inhibition, that's what we've been talking about this whole time. It is literally the final development in brain function. We're learning it as we grow. The more challenges, the more structure. As I said with Islam, praying 5 times a day. We've got zakat, we've got fasting, and all the 5 pillars. We've got recommendations. All of the structure we have. Raising our children in Islam is with the Quran as a guide or guidance. It's really, it gives you a lot of structure, because as we know, having errands to do, having chores around the house, all of these things help develop the child and a certain work ethic. They say one of the biggest problems with society's children today is the fact that these kids don't have any job assignments, any work ethic. They've got cell phones, they play games, they're not as physically active. Diabetes is at an all-time high because our kids don't have a well-developed executive function. So they're following their parental example, and as parents, we're letting them down. When we take that into family structure and executive function, think about goal planning, self-regulation, and that would include emotions, right? Think about those 2 in particular. What could you do in terms of executive function and decision-making in terms of family structure, family function? You could literally plan, and our sisters generally are better at it than the brothers are, but there are brothers out there that are great at this. The idea is, imagine if you plan today on how to show love to your spouse. We tend to plan on how to deal with, in my office, I'm planning on how to deal with coworkers and patients all day long. I plan, and it's embarrassing. Sometimes I'll plan harder how to do a good job at the office than I do at home. And a lot of us do that. Think about if you literally, brothers, if you literally planned today, because I've been blessed with this life, literally tell yourself, this is right, goal-directed behavior and self-regulation. Tell your spouse you love her. Take a physical action. Think about where these things, executive function, lives. We talked about the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and what we call Brodmann area number 10, the frontal polar area. These areas are all about, and remember, for those of you who do know, if you don't know, this area of your brain is probably the least understood. But as the research is showing, that frontal polar area is turning out to be one of the most highly connected areas of your brain. The research shows in science, dendrites, like here you have a nerve cell, and there's glial cells and all that stuff. You've got the dendritic content of the frontal polar area is disproportionately large. There's more dendrites in that area than any other area of the brain, which means, and the frontal polar area is considered an association area. Think about what happens if this is the last place to develop, and this is where we're now determining that executive function lives, that in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Think about what's around that we've talked about, those 5 subcortical areas. You got motor function, so you make a decision, frontal polar, dorsolateral prefrontal, and then you take an action step. You bring in all these sensations from your parietal lobes and your hearing and blah, blah, blah. And that comes up front, your frontal polar area. All of it gets fed into there. It feeds back. You got emotional responses, emotional control, initiation, inhibition. That area is tied into darn near everything so that it helps you better incorporate all the information around you to make these good executive function decisions, along with the dorsolateral feeding back into the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. You're using your frontal eye field to pay attention, and the motor areas to make to commit the action or inhibit the action, not do the action, right? Think about what's taking place there. Now, what I'm suggesting again is start with the family stuff. Literally, sister, you asked the question last week. Tell your husband that you appreciate the work he does. If he's going out every day and working and missing out on your company, he's missing out on maybe time with the children, because he's providing, for example. If you are, I'm cool with that too. The idea is then, husband, tell your wife you appreciate the work that she does. The Prophet ﷺ used to do housework. He used to get up when his daughter came into the room and give her his seat. So think about what takes place within the family. And again, there was no higher demonstration of executive function than the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The self-regulation, the decision-making. Allah chose him ﷺ for a reason. And I'm going to recommend that you GPA this stuff and GPA your home life. Literally, set a goal. There's a gigantic purpose, if nothing else, to please Allah, but to please your spouse, to please your children. And there's nothing wrong with pleasing yourself a little bit, saying, oh, look what I did today. But keep that to yourself. Don't make that vanity your sole purpose, but be pleased with these good actions. These are all executive function actions. If we take it into the office place, when dealing with patients in our office, and it's also a business. What we have, our boss gave us an assignment, about a week ago. And I literally, like I mentioned in the last talk, I GPA everything, because one of the big things about executive function is goal setting, goal achieving, and you can't do that without planning, can you? So I literally GPA little things every day. Our boss gave us an assignment last week, and I immediately GPA'd this thing because it was extra. And I've got to figure out how to fit this in between patients and in between doing my notes and in between x-rays, just MRI reports that I have to go over and the preparation we have to do. So I have to, literally GPA my day. Then when I get somewhere or I'm to the office, or if it's a day off and I'm doing something, I'll literally start GPAing little things in between that might come up. And in this case, something came up that I had to do that we were all supposed to be doing different parts of. I GPA'd. The goal was to get it done. The purpose, number one, it's part of my job assignment. Number two, for me, it really does. Everything relates back to Allah and being a Muslim. And I want to show Allah and my boss secondarily that I honor our agreement, my work, right? I do the work, he agrees to pay me, and there we are. So I honor my agreement with him. And as a Muslim, I'm ordered, absolutely, keep your word. If you can't keep your word, change your environment. Change, move. So I literally GPA'd that thing, and I set a goal. I'm going to get it done, my purpose, and my action steps. I knew based on our schedule and what takes place within the office, I literally set a time that if I have any space after 9:30 and before 12, it's usually 9:30, 10, somewhere in there. I start about doing extra stuff about 9:30. I'll start doing little bits of the assignment at 9:30 every day till it's done. And then just the other day, we had an office meeting and he pulled up my numbers. And it turned out I was the only one that did anything. MashaAllah. Thank God I'm a Muslim and I did something, right? I was the only one that did anything towards the project. And it was literally, I just GPA'd it. I didn't have any more time than the other associate. I don't have more time in our workday than the rest of the staff. We all have our jobs. We all have our things to do. And I didn't feel like it was a lot. I didn't do a lot. I just did a little bit every day, and then it caught up with me. But I literally GPA'd that thing, and that's training the executive function. And I'm going to give you a couple games before we finish tonight that hopefully are fun for you. But again, executive function is planning and doing, or inhibiting and not doing, inhibiting and doing something else. Executive function is not being distracted. Executive function is knowing what the goal is, regulating your desires to achieve a longer term goal rather than doing short term seeking. Like, for example, if you had a goal of losing weight, you may want that brownie today, just one, but you decide not to because of executive function, self-regulation, and you want to lose this 5 pounds, this 10 pounds, whatever it is you want to do to achieve that long-term goal of being healthy. That's executive function and inhibition to achieve a long-term goal. That's self-regulation at its finest, to not do things so that you can achieve that long-term goal. This computer project I'm working on with my computer guy, that's a long-term goal. I put in 4 hours, I think, almost 5 hours today. And what I did was, with the sister talking about last week, she wakes up at 1:30. I bump my clock up. Everyone knows I get up. I typically set it for 6 to make sure I am up and done. I'm doing my thing, get my prayer in on time, make sure my son's ready for work, do whatever I'm going to do. I may work out in the morning. Well, I changed my goals, executive function, right? I inhibit my desire to work out in the morning. So what I do is, and I bumped up my clock. it goes off at 5:30 every day. So I get an extra half hour of now I'm just on the computer every morning, although I do have a Versa climber. So rather going out into the garage and lifting weights and exercising, which is more time consuming, I jump on the Versa climber and do some climbing. It combines both physical muscular workout and an aerobic workout. So I'm also achieving a side goal that I wanted to do more aerobics, and I'm not the guy that runs. I've never liked running. I was the fast. I was a sprinter, and that was it. You moved me out past back when I was growing up, 440 yards, and I was done. I couldn't do that. So literally, I've never been a big jogger, but the Versa climber allows me to go fast. It allows me to go slow. It allows me to get a little bit of a muscular workout, and I can condense my workouts and get some aerobic activity. So what I did was I inhibited my desire to go into the garage in the morning so that I spend less time exercising in the morning, but I still squeeze in some with the Versa climber, and I spend more time on the computer trying to get this project done, if that makes sense. And that's the inhibition and the initiation and goal setting, a purpose, and my action steps, if that makes sense. That is executive function in a nutshell. So the sister that asked, you literally, and for all of us, executive function is the highest function in the brain. Executive function is built on everything else. It's built on motricity, motor movement, motricity. I love that word, motricity. It's movement. It's organized and balanced, controlled movement. That's what babies do when they first come out, right? It's constant movement, and they don't even know what they're doing yet. The research shows they don't know that doing all this stuff when they're first born and doing things, it's all reflexive action. It's all in the basal ganglia, they're training things in. Then they realize, oh my gosh, this is my hand. Oh my God, I can control these fingers. Holy cow, those are my legs. Those are my feet. I can touch things. I can chew on things. What is it? The feet, the hands, particularly the fingers, and the lips, the mouth, are the most highly innervated areas on a human being. So imagine everything goes in the mouth, right? Because it's stimulation, and the mouth is very sensitive. The lips, when babies are teething, they're chewing like crazy. As a baby, it's got to be driving them crazy because they can feel that like nobody's business, right? So think about all of that stuff we've talked about. Everything else has to develop. Our brains develop from the bottom up. If you've seen anything, primitive reflexes in the brainstem, that's how babies survive. Then they learn to control their actions and they start moving up. And the brain, when you see in anatomy, as the brain develops, it actually starts from the tissue in the womb. Then it divides into neural tissue, nerve tissue, and everything else tissue. Then it folds over and you've got a neural canal. Then all of this other tissue becomes skin, bone, blood vessels, everything except nervous tissue and brain tissue. And then out of that neural canal, the brain pooches up. And the brain grows from the bottom up, front to back and side to side. So think about it. The frontal pole, which is your most highly developed area of executive function, is darn near the last thing to fully develop in your brain. So with everything we've talked about already, executive function and self-regulation is built on everything else. Everything else. So the idea is the easiest thing to answer the question for executive function is develop everything else. You should develop a plan to be more mobile, more active. The motor centers, right? That's in front of the frontal pole. You've got the frontal eye field. Focus on reading, paying attention to things that are important. Read about the Sahaba, both men and women. Read the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. If you read for entertainment, I find entertaining the neural stuff, believe it or not. So I'm reading that all the time. But if you like reading, do it. Frontal eye field. Pay attention to things. Use your eyes more. It's also motor, right? Because you're moving across the page. You're watching things. Hugely important when you go out in the mornings. One of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, as soon as he left, he'd look up and acknowledge Allah and the world, all of creation. But use your vision, right? All of this develops before your frontal polar area and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex with executive decision making, interpreting, regulation. It's right in front of it. It has a lot to do with, along with your orbital frontal cortex, it has a lot to do with emotional regulation, which is right behind it, the anterior cingulate, right? All of that's going to influence your basal ganglia, which is right behind it. And don't worry about the names. I say it to remind myself. The basal ganglia, which is where your habits are formed. So your executive function, getting rid of bad habits and developing good habits. Okay. That's the last thing to develop in a person. So you literally want to build on all those other areas, and motor physical activity is the greatest, research shows, the greatest stimulation for brain function. There's nothing more with you every day in terms of stimulation than gravity. All those scientists that fly up, the astronauts, they come back, they've got bicycles, they've got whatever they've got up there. They come back with no muscle tone at all. They come back with their brain shrink up down to, I'd say nothing, I'm exaggerating. Their brain shrink. Because that gravitational stimulation is not here, or is not there in space, only here on Earth, they literally have brain shrinkage. Even though they're doing all these experiments, they're using the bicycles up there, but there's no gravity. There's no gravity. So think about how important for all of us motor movement is for executive function, for brain development. One of the things that we really use in the office, and you'll see a lot of the functional neurology offices that post on a regular basis, there's always motor movement in there. There is action of some kind in darn near every video. Physical therapists, everything is about motricity. Everything is about movement and coordinated movement. You've got the cerebrum, you've got the cerebellum, everything working together to move a little bit. You want to rub an eye. You don't want to poke the eye. So you've got initiation and inhibition, and you've got this controlled movement. You're flexing a muscle, stopping it, flexing it, stopping it, flexing a different one, stopping it, so that you don't poke yourself. Everything is movement. So to answer the question in a big picture thing, the best thing you can do for your executive function is get more movement in your life. More movement in your life. Now, if you want a few games, I'm going to recommend Remember Childhood stuff. And Simon Says, believe it or not, that's scientifically, that's considered a go, no-go game. What you're going to do is, for the colors on the floor, I thought this was a really cool game. It's hard. Kids can play it. Adults, you shouldn't interact like that. Hands on all over the different colors. The color comes up. You got to touch a hand or a foot to it. Anyway, the idea is, I love Simon Says. And I also showed you some games where you're going to do opposites and things. Go, no-go games of any kind. And there's a really good chart that you can actually search up. And I'm going to recommend all of you do it right now. That way, before we finish tonight, you can ask me about it. It's called the Stroop chart. STROOP chart. I'm going to recommend, for those of you who are looking right now, the Stroop chart is really, really cool. There's some great Japanese research about strengthening and increasing. So the Stroop chart, the one I prefer, and for those of you who are colorblind, we'll work it out. I prefer the one that has four primary colors. I like red, blue, green, and yellow. Really, really clear colors, right? There's a clear difference there. There's no confusion. What you do is you find, if you want to print it up, or you can make it, take a sheet of paper, just a blank sheet of paper. And what you can do is on that paper, you'll turn it sideways. You're going, no, let's see, the one we have at the office. Yeah, it's turned sideways. The ones I printed up. You have red, blue, green, and yellow. And what you're going to do, depending on your printer, or you can go with orange, as long as it's a bright orange and you can tell it's not yellow. You're going to have those four colors. And you're going to do there's 4 rows set up across. Each row, the top 2 rows have, pretend it's just the way I said it, red, blue, green, and yellow, or orange. The first one is a red color with the word red. The second one is blue color, word blue. The third one is green, word green color. And the fourth one is yellow or orange with that color in it, or that name in it. Okay, so it's orange. So it's an orange color, bright orange color with the word orange in it. The second row, organized differently, but it's the color and its word in there. So what you're going to do is you're going to read the word on all 4 columns, or all 4 rows, excuse me. And you can even do columns just to break it up, literally. What you're going to do is read. Now, the difference is on the second 2 rows, the word and the color do not match. You might have blue with the word red. You might have green with the word orange. You might have orange with the word red. Nope, sorry. Let's say orange and green, and then red and orange. That way they're all different, right? And the bottom 2 rows, clearly, the word does not match the color. Now, if you are colorblind, for anybody that's going to ask, if you're colorblind, pick other colors, but make it clear what they are. Make it clear what they are. You could almost get away with black and white, probably, but you'd have to use, a black outline for the word white in the white background. Anyway, you could do that. The 4 colors I recommend are just the ones I picked in the office, and I use orange. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to read the words as fast as you can. And that's what we did here at the house. That's what we do. With my kids, I did that. And literally click the timer, read the words as fast as you can, read the colors as fast as you can. Then those are the different, that's your base time. Now what you're going to do is, as you're looking at the Stroop chart, the struggle comes in when you're reading, and you would have realized that when you read the words as fast as you can, that's where the stumble comes from. Because in this case, English, the great override for your vision is the word, not the background. So if I'm reading something and I'm reading it as fast as I can, and now I hit the 2 rows of colors, I might hit the first one right. I'm going to start hesitating. I'm going to slow down to get it right, because my brain wants to jump to what the word, it takes the word as the truth. Now, how does this strengthen executive function? Your direction is to read all the words as fast as you can. Then your direction is to read the colors as fast as you can. The idea is now you got to actively inhibit executive function. You got to decide the rules have changed. That's where right and wrong comes in. The rules have changed, and your brain is really, really serious about getting things right. Right and wrong comes in, but the verbal override drives your brain crazy. It makes it so hard to follow the direction of read the colors as fast as you can. You'll hit it, your eyes focus on the word, then you remember the colors, so now you're going slower. Then you try to pick it up and you start nailing the words rather than the colors and start over again. The idea is that Stroop chart is a game winner. That is one of the best executive function training tests and training that you can do. And then, like I said, you've got 4 rows of 4 colors. Then you can read it backwards, which is even harder because as English speakers, we're not used to going right to left. And you can read it top down or bottom up. And then what I do, if you get really good at this, if you do this all the time, really to train in your executive function, your inhibition and your initiation, if you really train that in, you can literally cut it up into cards, sheets of paper, and then just flip them and say the colors as fast as you can. Like I said, I really to preset the challenge, read the words first, because it comes indiscriminately when you cut them up. Read the words first, then shuffle them up, face down, and then read the colors as fast as you can. The Stroop chart is a phenomenal toy or a phenomenal test and treatment to improve executive function and any go, no-go games. You can do, we used to do something we called card grab. And I think I mentioned this before. I love card grab. This is the only card game I play. What you do is you take out the face cards for the basic part. You can leave the aces if you want to, and those consider them 1, the number 1. And you've got 1 through 10. What you're going to do is train in the first part of this is just pretend your right hand is even and your left hand is odd. Every time your spouse or your partner or your child, or every time you flip it over and your spouse, if it's an even number, they grab it with the right hand or left, whatever you guys decide. You set the rules. Every even number, grab with the right and pull it over. Every odd number, grab with the left and pull it over. Boom, 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 boom. That's your base time. Do it a couple times. Your fastest time's your base time. Do it with each other and compete. Have fun. Then what you're going to do, the direction will be, here's the override, go, no go. 1 through 10, right? Ace through 10. Now you go not black and red. I mean, not even and odd, but black and red. The override, you see a number, you want to grab it. But now you're going color. Words and numbers in a game are an override for your brain. They're easily understood. They give you a lot of information, so you grab it. Now what you're going to do is pretend you're on to stage 2. You did the red and black, red and black, red and black, red and black. I mean, even and odd, even and odd, even and odd. Sorry. You're doing even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, 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 even, da, 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 da. Now what you're going to do is with your right hand, you're going to grab all the black cards, no matter what the number. With your left hand, you're going to grab all the red cards, no matter what number. Good luck with that. It's literally, you want to respond to the number. So these are 2 great executive function games. And then, of course, being competitive, and all 4 of my kids have great reflexes. Now that I'm in my 60s, mine may not be as good as theirs. I would start as I'm flipping cards. I didn't think it was cheating, but what I do is I'd flip towards one hand. And of course, now they have to inhibit the desire to respond with the hand that the card is coming to. And they still beat me. I got to tell you, they killed it. It is. When you make it a lot of fun, it is a lot of fun. And that's literally, those are 2 great things to do. The Stroop chart, STROOP chart, and what we called card grab. I can't remember the name of it. There was a name for it. And the kids and I have been doing that one for years. So I just call it card grab. And then I do it with patients and I teach them sometimes. But again, if I can jump back, executive function is almost the last thing to develop. It pretty much is the last thing to develop in brain function. You can help it in children by teaching them to do their chores before they play a game, do their homework and get it right and get it done before they're allowed any TV time at all. You have to teach them. Part of executive function is initiation and inhibition. Part of executive function is planning and achieving, right? You want to achieve these long-term goals of passing the test short-term, passing the class long-term, passing school even longer term, right? So what you're going to do is teach the inhibition of whatever it is. I'm a big fan of giving a child a snack when they get home and then moving them right into homework. Everyone has a little bit of different personality. One of my daughters, she actually finds that much stimulation. I mean, she graduated with like, I think a 3.75 from high school, right? She maintained she maintained a 3.8 in college, all while playing basketball. That stimulation and the focus and the concentration to make it through things. She was the one, she'd come home after school, after class, or after practice and go right in, clean up and take a nap. And then she'd wake up about 8, 9 o'clock. If she had any homework, she'd do it. If she didn't, she'd go back to bed. So the idea is based on personalities. That's how you work within, your family structure, within yourself. You know yourself, left brain, right brain. You get wore out. Some people that are super empathetic. I mentioned I have a patient that she's super empathetic, and when she gets a lot of patient challenges during her day at the office, it wears her out, and she has to go home and rest before she does anything else. And that can be true. That's the case. I've seen it. We know it. But the idea is, again, what you want to do, again, if you have children or with yourself, you really have to understand about executive functions. One of the most important parts of executive function is self-regulation. One of the easiest ways to self-regulate is to plan tomorrow, today. Plan when you get up in the morning and I get to the office and things arise. I plan how I'm, I plan how I'm going to handle those challenges. And I wish I was a teenager when I learned this. I wish I had the discipline a lot of my friends did. Study time was not a time to chit chat for a lot of people I knew from the school I transferred to. These guys would go in, study time was time to do homework. They literally got as much as they could get done before they left school. That way they could, it was amazing to me. They could go back and ask a teacher a question. Never occurred to me. I'd wait till the last minute at home, and my parents made me do the homework, and then I might have questions and I had to wait till the next day to get an answer if I remembered to do it. I didn't learn to really concentrate and to achieve literally until chiropractic school. I went back to school at the age of 31. Even then, if I would have known 30 plus years ago, to GPA everything, to plan tomorrow. And then if there are any surprises, what about the changes? Oh my God, I never know. That's fine. Figure out what's important and you have to get done today and keep that in your plan and move the unimportant stuff to tomorrow. As I told you to start this talk with, I literally cut out my weightlifting in the garage in the mornings so that I could do the computer project that I have to get this stuff done so that my computer guy, so that my partner can get his stuff done. He's all done with his part of it. He's waiting for mine to finish everything. And so I decided I restructured my GPA and I used my VersaClimber more, which then added to the health thing because now I'm doing a little bit more aerobic than I was before. So it's still, you figure out how to make it work. The only way you can make it work is to literally have a plan to do, and then you can restructure your plan. Because if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a plan, what are you going to do when something new gets thrown at you? Literally, what are you going to do? Because you don't even know how to fit it in because you don't have any structure at all anyway. And again, like I said, you can GPA everything. literally GPA everything. As I started this talk, it's hugely important family structure. I GPA in every Friday, for example. I Juma Mubarak my kids, and I say I love you. And I want to say that's every Friday in a text. And then they text me back every Friday. I text them or call almost every day. And I through the 4 children, my youngest is here at the house. He's working though. He's got a job. So that's part of it. If you want to stay at home, you can, but you need to have a job. And I get up in the mornings and I literally get up before he does. So when I'm done making my wudu and when I'm done with the little stuff, I go in and wake him up and then he can go into the bathroom. Right. So then we've got this structure and I GPA that. And now I'm up 30 minutes earlier. So it's 5:30 and I wake him up after 5:45 and between literally probably 5:45 and 6:10, depending on what I did before that. He cleans up, he gets ready, we do our thing, then we go out into the world, right? And that's GPA'd into my schedule. And then I know I got to, and you guys, you got to leave the house at a certain time. You got to do this much with your kids to get them ready. You even plan the night before what, pack lunches, whatever you do. The idea is you're already doing it. Now you want to do it on purpose. And now you want to even practice, like I said, GPA the affection, GPA the attention to your spouse and your children, GPA the attention to family members who may not be there. It's literally GPA that phone call, GPA the text. It's in Islam, we know it's hugely important. You will be punished if you cut off the ties of the womb. I don't talk to one of my brothers hardly often at all. And I sent him a text the other day. I think I told you about it. And he literally texted me, one of those I love you, I appreciate you text. And he sent me a text back saying, okay, what's happening? And I had to say, I'm just trying to be nice because you're a great guy kind of thing. But the idea is that's in the back of my mind. I want to, family ties and I want to please Allah. And family affection is huge. When we talk about getting married, let's not forget about perfecting ourselves to stay married. I know I've got people I know try to get into the best shape of their lives going into the marriage. These people, especially, non-Muslims, they want to wear these semi-revealing dresses, right? Think about what takes place. I got to look good in my dress. Oh, I got to look good. Muslim brothers and sisters, I want to look appealing to my spouse in a halal fashion. And then the whole rest of their lives, they don't try to do anything ever again. And I see it all the time. The idea is that the Prophet ﷺ told us 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. GPA that. We're supposed to be able to shoot a bow and arrow, ride a horse, and swim. Someone that lived in the desert even mentioned swimming. Think about the exercise there, right? These are all things we're supposed to, our motricity, right? Motor activity. These are all hugely important. GPA it and improve your executive function. And I know that was, I gave you a ton of examples because I've been thinking about this ever since last week. And we have to remember that executive function is built on everything else. Our brains develop bottom up, front to back, and middle out, right? Or middle out. I'll say it that way, front to back, side to side. It's bottom up and middle outward. So you have to improve everything. And it kind of makes it easy too. And your executive function will improve also. And then I gave you a couple of games that are really fun, especially the card game. Boom, 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 boom. The Stroop test you can actually do by yourself. The card game is fun to play. I got to tell you, I really competitively, I enjoyed that with the kids. And those are two of my favorites. And you can certainly search up other executive function games, some of the things you can improve with, because memory is involved with executive function and how you tie things together, digit span, the mini mental exam that they try all the time, believe it or not. Like I said, everything else develops before your ability to self-regulate, 100%. So doing everything else we've ever talked about will improve executive function. And then GPA as much as you can, even the affection to your spouse, children, family members. That's hugely important. And I like that one especially because I tend not to be very, believe it or not, I tend to not be very affectionate. So I literally have trained that into my day. And gratitude. When you make someone else feel good, you feel good about yourself. It's a win-win situation. It's a positive reinforcement for both of you when you're involved with that. And showing affection, showing appreciation is huge in terms of developing gratitude. Are there any questions?